type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's May 17th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Walter Lee.
Hello, lovely to be here.
All right, and Park Ki-hoon.
Happy Hump Day, Yoon.
Happy Hump Day! Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Now, for the first time in 6 years, local governments, public organizations, and schools have taken part in civilian defense drills here in the country. The drills train civilians on how they should act when emergency situations like wars or natural disasters break out. Participants on Tuesday were asked to evacuate to nearby underground evacuation facilities and learned how to do CPR and wear gas masks. Soon, this type of annual defense drill will be expanded to all civilians here in Korea. Now, many people have been raising concerns over whether it's okay for Japan to discharge more than 1 million tons of water from the wrecked Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. Though Japanese officials have insisted that it's safe since it has been treated, that hasn't stopped people worrying. To that, Wade Allison, a professor at Oxford University, said that there's no need to be afraid. During a press conference organized by Korea's Atomic Energy Research Institute, professor said he wouldn't even be able to drink a liter of water from Fukushima. Last but not least, now that we've said goodbye to COVID-19 restrictions, countries like Hong Kong are actively trying to welcome tourists back. International airlines in Hong Kong have given out roughly 24,000 free return tickets to aspiring travelers on Tuesday. Now, this is part of the government's Hello Hong Kong campaign that aims to attract more than 1.5 million visitors. Now, let's take a closer look at the third news item. To get these tickets, you can visit the websites of Hong Kong's airlines. There are 4 in total that provide these free tickets. They're Cathay Pacific Airlines, Hong Kong Express Airlines, Hong Kong Airlines, and Greater Bay Airlines. Now, it's all first come, first serve. Now, I would like to ask our panels here in the studio, did you guys try getting these tickets, or would you like to go to Hong Kong?
If I tried and succeeded, I guess I wouldn't be here right now.
Yes, for sure.
I failed. But it's great to hear that we have finally come to an endemic and the international boundaries are now open for everyone to travel around. I have been to Hong Kong once before, but it was for work, so I really couldn't enjoy my time. But this time around, if I do get the chance to visit Hong Kong, I really want to, be on that tourist mode and just enjoy everything about Hong Kong and perhaps visit Macau for some more entertainment.
All right, what about you, Walter?
It's actually on my bucket list of places to go around the world. I really wanted to visit Hong Kong around the time actually COVID hit. And also it was not a safe place at that time as well because of the protests as well. So it was really bad timing for me. I think I would have gone there by now. But yes, I was very disappointed to know that they were giving out free tickets and I didn't get on that train there, so yes.
Especially since it's first come, first serve.
Yeah, first come, first serve.
Yeah, all right. And that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Let's move on to our discussion topic. Everything seems to be on the internet, even past pictures or posts that we wished we'd never uploaded in the first place. That's why a few years ago, the European Union enacted the right to be forgotten. To find out what this is, take a look at the screen. If something is put on the internet, there's a feeling that it could be there forever and could come back to haunt you. But some people are trying to remove their past lives from the internet through their right to be forgotten. That's when you force search engines to remove links or information about you in the past. Last month, South Korea has decided to allow young people aged under 24 to force companies to erase past social media posts and private info such as their names, addresses, or photos of themselves as minors. The new project allows young adults who've forgotten their passwords or deactivated their accounts to remove their presence on the internet easily, but only for posts that they uploaded when they were younger than 18. That's mainly because officials are well aware that people have been using smartphones at a young age and could have uploaded things that they would regret later as adults. Today, NewsGen aims to answer 3 questions. 1. What do young adults think about the right to be forgotten? 2. How are other countries trying to protect this right? 3. What needs to be better done in an era where you can't do anything without access to the internet? Having grown up as digital natives, we're all used to posting and sharing our lives on the internet. But because the advancement of internet happened so quickly, we weren't educated or guided about how to use the internet to our best interests or in the most healthy way. That's why years after posting before thinking twice, the right to be forgotten has come to the surface. So Ki-hoon, why don't you walk us through what this right to be forgotten is?
Right. The right to be forgotten or the right to erasure is the right to remove any personal information from internet searches and social media. And this right caught the public attention with the rise of the digital age and to protect individuals of their privacy and to give them more control over their personal data so that they're not stigmatized or judged based on their past online activities. And it recognizes that fact that people can change and evolve over time. So their online presence should reflect their current status and circumstances rather than purely on what they did before.
Right.
Okay, so it's basically just a right for people to delete any personal past information from the internet.
And I'm well aware that a lot of European countries have been trying to enact this right, but how is South Korea trying to ensure this?
Well, since April 24th, the Korean government has launched a website to help people under the age of 24. An interesting number to be honestly landing on. Why 24, we are not sure. But those, as we mentioned before, are for those who may have forgotten their passwords or deactivated their accounts for a certain period of time, but still have their pictures or videos or posts up online. Now, in many, people are not just using this obviously to cover up bad things that they might have said, but there are a lot of people as well who get exploited as well. So, example, since we're targeting under 18-year-olds, there's obviously some people out there who use those images and use them illegally. So this is a really good thing for those people as well. We can't just look at it for an embarrassing situation like my Facebook in MySpace a long time ago, which has plenty of cringeworthy content on it.
But because you're over the age of 24.
Yeah, so please don't go looking for it.
You can't even erase them. But that's why I wanted to ask, what do most millennials and Gen Z think about, erasing unwanted photos or videos of them from the past, or AKA protecting their right to be forgotten?
Well, at least I don't feel alone. So if we take a look at the screen, a survey of 5,095 adults in South Korea were asked if they would use this right to be forgotten service. Now, 71%, that's quite most of the majority, has said yes. So this shows that there are many people out there who must have, I guess, posted something that they're embarrassed by, or maybe something that they have said or regretted. As we know, a trend these days is, for some internet trolls to grab something that someone said many years ago that they obviously regret and think very differently now, and try to, let's say, cancel them in this cancel culture that we live in. So yes, I think it's a good thing that this has come into place.
Right, so 7 out of 10 of millennials and Gen Z want to get their right to be forgotten protected. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, a little contrary to the millennials, some experts have differing views on this matter, suggesting that having any kind of personal information being deleted for good can be like losing important puzzle pieces that could be used for evidence and clues for any kind of emergency, disastrous, or even criminal events. Although it's not going to be very common, but this could be also an issue that could cause concern. So I think the committee that runs this personal information removal service should outline that while they will remove the requested data from the specified portal, that it could be kept as a record for any reference for the future and for different purposes.
All right. Then how is the right to be forgotten protected in other countries?
Okay, so the right to one's privacy is starting to spread across the globe, and I think it's a good thing. So it started off with the European Union, and we have other countries like India, of course, South Korea here, and some South American countries such as Argentina recognize the right to erasure, with each country having their own, I guess, standards and spin. Like I said, in Korea, we only have it for under 24-year-olds. So it is different in other countries as well.
So what are some other countries then?
Well, in the United States, tech giant companies like Google and Microsoft have a little different idea towards the right to be forgotten notion, as they even allow bereaved family members to have access to emails and social network accounts to their lost ones. I think this kind of derives from the notion of the freedom of expression and, of course, conserving any sort of digital asset or information that could become useful and important later on. So I think, there is a slight contrast between different countries on how they perceive this idea, but I think we should come up with like an international law that really satisfies everyone moving forward.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. And why don't we now include an expert with special knowledge on AI and digital policy in our discussions? Let's now hear from the head of the Center for AI and Digital Policy. It's Mark Rodenberg from Washington, D.C. Welcome, Mark.
Hi.
All right, so we've been talking about this right to be forgotten. Tell us what you think about this and how has it come to be?
Well, I think it's a very important right. I think, as your panelists have explained, it's fundamental for privacy and for controlling personal identity. I remember the famous case from the Court of Justice of the European Union back in 2014, Google versus Spain, when a person said that Google was making personal information available that was no longer relevant and it was no longer accurate, and they asked that the information be removed. And Google said they wouldn't do that, which is the reason the case was brought.
Right.
And the European Court agreed, establishing the right, which, as you've described, has now spread to many countries. And I think this is a very favorable trend.
All right. And Kyun, do you have a question for Mark?
Yes. So how's it like in the States, and when and how has this right to be forgotten been implemented?
Well, we have this right in various settings. I mean, in financial records, for example, you can effectively erase bankruptcy records. Juvenile criminal histories can be deleted. If you go in the state of California, I think the age is 16 maybe, there's a state law that allows you to remove information for minors. Google has, mixed feelings about giving this right in the United States. They argue that there's a free expression interest in allowing the availability of the information, which I think may be correct for public officials, but I think for most private people, it would seem odd to say that their private details should be publicly available if they would like them removed.
Right, and it seems like governments around the world are trying to ensure safer use of the internet, which is great. That's why they're coming up with these laws protecting various rights, and such as the right to be protected, right? Here in Korea, as Kyun actually mentioned, lawmakers are thinking of passing a law that allows bereaved families to take over their deceased family members' social media accounts. What do you actually think about this movement?
Well, that's an interesting topic also. I'll say the way that's handled in the U.S. is that family members may obtain access to a deceased family member's account unless the deceased specifies in a will that they have a different preference. So the thought is that if you have a strong opinion about what should become of your social accounts, that right should be respected. But if you haven't expressed a strong opinion, then it would seem, as with other matters involving the family, that the decision will be made by others.
All right, and one last question for you, Mark. Your expertise is in AI and digital policy. Now that we're seeing a free and open internet, up to that, not a lot of people are educated on how to use it safely. We have to think twice before posting, but that's not really happening. It's so easily accessible. So in your opinion, what would be some efforts needed on the digital policy front for us to be, having better and safer rights on the internet?
Well, I think tech literacy is very important. I also think things are about to get a lot more complicated and a lot more interesting. We had a big hearing today in the United States Senate on generative AI, and we were talking about ChatGPT and the emergence of a lot of synthetic text, synthetic voice, synthetic images. A lot of what we are going to see in the next few years will not be authentic. So I think we're going to need to be smart, both about how the internet operates, but I think we're also going to need critical thinking skills to be able to assess what we're seeing, decide what's true, and make good judgments.
And hopefully that could be like a global cooperation, countries could share their different technology and expertise for that to better happen.
Yes, I hope that will happen. I also want to give a shout out to Korea because, in fact, your government has been leading a lot of these efforts through UNESCO and other international organizations. I'm a big fan, and I hope that work continues.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. It was a pleasure to hear from you today.
Nice speaking with you. Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Mark.
right.
Thanks, Mark.
Now, Mark is the head of the Center for AI and Digital Policy. That's why he's given us a lot of professional insight on this matter. Any, points he made that fascinated you?
He made very good points. What he mentioned about, a lot of AI and technology. I mean, it's great, but it's still a little synthetic, not authentic, and we need to be a bit more smart and have a bit more critical thinking skills when what we define as true or false, and whatever we upload on the internet, we have to be careful and
Right.
think twice. And just because we're young, we can make mistakes, but like what Walter said, I mean, there are people out there who's going to manipulate, try
For
to take
sure.
advantage of these kind of digital information. So I think we do need more education on this front,
Yes.
and yeah, I think we should all work together to really be smarter users of the internet.
And to advance tech literacy, you mentioned a very good point. Education is key. Any other thoughts you have?
Well, I actually found it really interesting that he said that you could actually wipe away juvenile records. When we in Korea have recently started talking about keeping them
Yes.
and making it harder for people to get into universities this way. So the fact that in the States they're thinking, well, you were young, you did this mistake, but
Yeah.
we can clear that for you. I don't know if I agree with that. I think that it would have to depend on the crime, but it's quite interesting that America is looking at that.
And also, wasn't it fascinating how he mentioned that we should be cooperating on a global front? You mentioned that as well before. And I think South Korea is doing a really good job in the sense that it's, advancing and providing its own technology too.
Yeah, well, I think he praised Korea for it, so it was a
Yeah.
very good compliment.
All right, now before we continue our talks, let's also hear from our global viewers. We asked them whether they wish they could delete their own online history. So take a look at the screen. We chose 3 comments. Platinum Trophy said, well, I'm glad I've deleted my Facebook. Just venting my frustrations about politics, the government, family issues. I've learned to just talk to friends and family and not be so quick to post my frustrations online. Good idea, Platinum Trophy. Hussein Demir said, I wish I could delete my old Facebook account. I don't have access to it anymore and it contains posts from my childhood. I hope Hussein is under the age of 24 because here in Korea he could delete it then. Benny said, I haven't had a cringe post lately, but I can agree with the thoughts of having the cringe posts be deleted. Now these are all very interesting comments from our viewers based on today's discussion topic, but why don't we change gears towards the end of our discussion? Recently, South Korea has proposed a law allowing bereaved families to manage the social media of the deceased, as both Ki-hoon and Walter have mentioned. And this is another example of how we're seeing more laws to better ensure one's rights and protection on the digital front. So what do you guys think about this?
Well, it's really hard to say whether there's a need to access somebody's account after they've passed away. I mean, as we heard before by the professor, it just really does depend. There is financial issues maybe that you could look into, but the only things that you don't see on people's social media pages are the messages behind the stuff that could be juicy in a way. Or some people don't want that leaked or want their family members to know. And I mean, if they really have the right, let's say they didn't cheat, it wasn't anything bad, but there were certain views that they had that
They
could
don't want to share.
possibly,
Yeah.
they don't want to share, or they might have something in there, like they're messaging to themselves that they keep, that they don't want anyone to find out. And I found it really interesting in the interview that you can put it in your will not to share the access to your account. So I think, is it a good idea for people to access their deceased loved one's account? I don't think it's a good idea, personally.
Then what's your viewpoint on this?
This is a very tricky question, and again, touch wood, if my brother does pass away. I
Knock
shouldn't be
on
laughing.
wood, yes.
Knock on wood. Okay. I wouldn't really want to look into his personal account. Just for different reasons. But on one hand, it can bring benefits depending on the incident of the death. For example, if it needs further investigation and information about the cause of the death, yes, looking into their emails can be one way to find clues. However, like what Walter said, I don't think anyone would like anyone to look into their personal accounts, social media accounts, even family members, of course. But like I pointed out before, and of course what Mark pointed out before, if there is a more detailed law that gives a consent of the bereaved to look into, manage and take ownership of everything from the deceased accounts, and if that is agreed upon in their will, I think it may work out for the better.
Yeah, and you also mentioned like this isn't the most common case, but in order for you to do investigations into like the cause of the death, that could be very critical information. And I think the significance of today's discussion topic is we've seen the internet develop and advance so quickly, but we weren't on par, as up to par in terms of tech literacy and education.
Right.
But do you guys think it's really up to the government to be helping us out with that, or should there be other people that are helping us out?
I really do think it's up to the government and the education system to teach this in schools. I think, like you said, we grew up in an age where we were just shoved straight into the whole digital world with social media, starting with Facebook, SciWorld, etc. And we didn't really know how to react. We just found it as something really fascinating to do. We didn't realize what we could say, what we could post could one day affect our future. It was just, we were living in the now. So what the government needs to do, or the education system needs to do, is teach people, listen, what you may say may affect your future, whether you like it or not, even if you do delete it, even if you think it's not offensive or strange now. You know, times are changing. There are a lot of things that we used to say as people back then that we cannot say now, right? But which we thought were acceptable. So education is primary for this.
And we're millennials, so we're used to sort of the analog and digital front at the same time. But your daughter, being a Gen Alpha, she's going to be growing up in a digitally active front. So what are your thoughts on that? Like in elementary school, would you like your daughter to be educated on how to use social media?
Well, obviously, I was one of those parents who originally thought, listen, I don't want to expose my daughter to digital media, but it's just part of the world now. So there's no avoiding it. So the best thing for me to do is to make sure she has the proper education, even if it's not from school. Like myself or my wife will have to talk to her about the dangers of social media, especially for women. What you may upload could be spread across the globe in a negative way, not in a positive way.
Right.
So it is very scary as a parent to think about these things, but it definitely needs to be taught.
What about you, Kyun? You've been teaching young students as well. Do you think there should be more efforts on this front?
Definitely. And one little advice that I'd like to give that I thought about just now is instead of when you're frustrated, want to upload anything for any kind of matter, use a diary. Use your own personal diary. Like what we did 20, 30 years ago. Just write everything you want to write down and just keep it to yourself. And it won't, nobody would have to look at it and you won't even have to delete it. Just throw it away if you don't want it.
Exactly. I remember, I think
a diary.
Exactly. One of our viewers also mentioned that too. And that's a very good idea. Just write it in your diary, lock it up, and don't show it to anyone.
Let's go old school.
It is old school. Let's go old school. All right. And that's all we have for you today. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And Park Ki-hoon.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.